welcome back to everyone that's tuned in to the American Ultra Stock channel. Trying to start this show right here. Quite frankly, it's kind of speechless still. I can't believe that just happened. The USMNT has lost to Panama 2-1. A number of factors helped that, and we are going to be discussing this in this analysis, post-match analysis. It kind of hasn't really sunk in yet, but Braden, straight after that match, what can you say? Immediate thoughts on the aftermath of probably one of the most shocking and embarrassing experiences as a USMNT fan and USMNT history as well.
Yeah, I think that might even be a bit of an understatement. What a result! And my main takeaway initially, without dissecting the game too much, is Tim Weah. What the hell are you doing? There's absolutely no reason for this to happen, and it's the exact same thing that we saw from Serginho Dest. Obviously, a different situation. Dest just punted the ball, and Weah attacked a player. But it's the same thing that we saw from Dest against Trinidad and Tobago, and we see how a red card early in the game completely changes the match, turns it on its head against an inferior opponent both times. We have no right to be losing to Trinidad and Tobago, even with 10 men. We have no right to be losing to Panama. I mean, with 10 men, they're a better team. You can understand it. But the amount of possession they had after that, it's absolutely insane. When I was watching it back, the Weah incident, I thought, okay, maybe he attacked the player that had run through Turner, because that was a disgrace. I can't believe he got away with that without even a yellow card. Horrible. I mean, he gave Turner a concussion. He's now a doubt for the rest of the tournament. I don't understand some of the refereeing decisions. Not only that one, there was a couple other questionable ones. But Weah just goes at a random player because he couldn't separate himself from him. I really don't understand. It's such a stupid mistake to make. It's something you would expect to see from an elementary schooler, a middle schooler, not someone who's been a locked-in starter for the USMNT for how long now? Someone who's viewed as one of our most important players. I mean, we've said it time and time again. His spot should not be secure. He's so lucky that we don't have anyone to really come in and take his spot, because he doesn't deserve it anymore. I think he has so many questions to be answered. And yeah, I mean, I'm lost for words, like you said. I think that's the biggest takeaway. There's going to be others that we're going to talk about as we dissect a little bit more into the match. But I think the first immediate thought has to be, Weah, you cost your team probably the entire Copa America with one stupid decision.
Yeah, my main takeaway, honestly, since you already dissected the main moment, I mean, it's in my background for a reason. It changed the game, as you said. It completely changes the game. It gives the other team hope. But what I will say from the aftermath of what happened, I see a lot of people, and again, I dislike Greg as much as the next guy, but I see some people giving zero accountability to the players. I know that his tactics came into play, and the possession thing, as you said, that's on the manager, the way that you set up your team. But he has no control over what Weah is going to do in that moment, and with some of the effort that some of the other players showed and what happened. So now dissecting and diving into the game and how we got to that point. First half, Braden, in your opinion, it was looking lively. We even got a disallowed goal. It was looking like a perfect match, but everything turned on its head. And what do you think? How do you see that first half? Walk us through your opinion.
What a difference an early goal makes. When we saw it against Bolivia, we anticipated Bolivia sitting back for the whole game, bunkering. Obviously, Panama played a different way, but we get that early goal, completely ruin their system, what they were trying to do, and from there it's smooth sailing. In this one, who knows what would have happened. We get the early goal. A great set piece comes in. Maybe the new set piece coach has been doing a little bit of something, because he orchestrated the corner that we scored off against Bolivia. That was a good set piece. So maybe it's been doing something. It has to be said, incredible save from the Panama keeper to deny Richard's header from that close to a range. Really, you have to just give him credit for that. And Churim as well. I think despite being offside, the goal doesn't happen without him. It's a very high IQ play to play the ball back to McKennie instead of from that angle and that distance trying to take a shot yourself. It's a perfect assist. It's just a shame that he ended up being offside. And who knows, imagine if that goal had went in. How the game would have been so much different. Panama would have had to adjust their tactics. And on the opposite side, imagine if for some reason our goal against Bolivia was disallowed. How would that have impacted the game? Because they would have stuck with the bunker. We would have struggled to break down as always. So an early goal just makes so much of a difference. I think it's clear to see. But like you said, it continued to be lively. There were some chances either way. like we already mentioned, Turner got ran through by a Panamanian player and nothing happened to him, which is just, again, stupid from the ref. Weah gets sent off inexplicably. And then Fuller and Balogun take a bout. I think the only positive we can take away from this match is that Balogun has finally found his USMNT form. That is one of the best goals I've seen in a long, long time, especially from a player in a U.S. shirt and especially from a striker in a U.S. shirt, because we know how many chances we've missed. We know how long we've been searching for our 9. We finally found him. Balogun has arrived, and he was incredible the entire game as well. I mean, we'll get into our standouts, but I think he won man of the match, and I think deservedly so. The Panama goal, it was a bit of an unlucky deflection from Jedi. It went back to the player. I think the fact that Ream and Richards, again, were just too slow to step. I think, who was it? I think Blackman was it that scored the goal, had so much time on the ball, and realistically, that should be a shot that's saved. But I will give Turner a pass. If you've been watching for a while, you know I don't rate Matt Turner, but he probably has a concussion at that point, so I think it's kind of unfair to expect much from him at that point in the game. So I'll give him a pass on the goal. Although if he was fully healthy, I would absolutely be criticizing him, because that's a healthy goalkeeper needs to make. And then we go into halftime 1-1. And yeah, I think overall it was a pretty even first half. There was a lot of events going on, all sorts of directions. There was some great goals, off the field stuff. So much happened in the first half. What did you take away from that?
Yeah, and just to explain to the viewers, we will be diving into the standouts. And when we say standouts, obviously they're more negatives than positives, but we'll be highlighting individual analysis later on in the video. The way that I saw the first half was we're looking lively, we're looking good, and I thought, well, this is nice. Panama's going to play like they always play, which is going forward. They needed a result as well. I think maybe, I don't know if Greg was aware of that, they needed a result, so they were exposing themselves even more. Balogun, props to him. I just want to highlight, it's the first time I see him singing the anthem. It's always nice to see. And also, just his demeanor before the goal, I even highlighted on some of these group chats that Balogun's doing well today. And I think that goal against Bolivia was crucial to him. And I really hope that we get to somehow make it through, because it's looking like this could be his statement tournament for the U.S. It's his first major tournament with us. And he looks so lively, so well. Doing well with the hold up and the play against a better defense as well than Bolivia. So that's my main takeaway on the first half. Props to Balogun. The moment of madness with Weah, I think everyone's been talking about it. I don't understand, especially after his statement and Greg's statement say that the guy bumped into him. He just puts his arm in front of him not to allow a run inside, and the ball is so far away, and Weah loses his head inexplicably. Honestly, worse than death in my opinion. This was insane, really, and it completely changed the game. Turner, honestly, nothing to say. The guy was with a concussion. I'm just impressed with how McKennie gave Coco Carrasquilla, the only player with a creative spark in Panama, so much space. Don't want to be too harsh on West, but he's just standing there. Rewatch the goal. I mean, he's just standing there. Adams is so out of position early on in the play. He overcommits and runs all the way to their right back, to their left back, and the goal happens. But we go into the half 1-1. It's looking like it's going to be a challenge, not an uphill battle if the manager has some repertoire to resort to. But then we come back and then we see what we saw. Second half, Braden, walk us through what you thought was that disaster class.
Yeah, you said it best. It was a disaster class. And I think it all starts at halftime when Greg decides to make his changes. Horvath for Turner. I mean, we know what happened with Turner. Medically, the sub has to happen. And props to Greg for actually playing Horvath instead of Sean Johnson. I had a slight fear that it might be Johnson. So props to him for, I guess, getting that one right. Although I will say Horvath maybe could have done better on the second goal. But I mean, when it's coming in from at that pace and from that close range, I think it's more on the defender, but we'll get to that one later. Speaking of the defender for that goal, actually, Cameron Carter-Vickers comes in to go to a back 5. I mean, the other change is we knew was going to happen. Johnny comes in for Tyler Adams, and let me just say, the change makes sense, but why are you starting Adams 2 games in a row with little to no rest when you know in both of them he's going to come off at halftime because he can't play a full 90? It's a waste of a sub. It's a waste of a starter. It makes zero sense from any aspect, especially in a game where we have the ability to go attack. Obviously, we didn't know the red card was going to happen. In an 11v11 game against Panama, we have a lot of attacking opportunities. Johnny, I think, is a little bit better at that than Tyler Adams is. Or even bring in Musa to start, or someone who can progress the ball a little bit better to give us more opportunities. And like you said, Adams' one job is to play defense, but he was completely out of position on Panama's goal. So really, what did he even do? It doesn't make sense to start him there. Johnny comes in, and then CCV comes in to go to a back five, bringing off Reyna, who was pretty quiet in the first half, I have to say. It's probably still due to the fact that he is still playing out of position, not at the 10 role. But how are you going to bring off our only creative spark in the midfield to go to a back five, park the bus, basically wave the white flag, and pray for a draw against Panama? I know you have 10 men. I get it. But why are we just throwing in the towel on any chance of scoring another goal? A draw is fine, but at that point, you're basically praying to not lose. It doesn't make sense. You can't forfeit any attacking spark. Pulisic can't do it on his own. Balogun can't do it on his own. And there was times where they had to try, and props to them because they got close a couple times. But if we had another creative spark like Reyna in there, it really doesn't make sense. If it had been a defender like Dest against Trinidad that got sent off, maybe I understand bringing on CCV. But to go to a back five, and especially the fact that you're bringing on probably the worst defender on the roster besides Shaq Moore, because I mean he doesn't count. He doesn't deserve to be on the roster either. But CCV was so shaky. Every single moment the attacker got the ball and he was playing defense, I mean, he had that opportunity, which, looking back at it, maybe could have been a penalty, where he got nutmegged by, I think it was Fajardo. I could be mistaken there, but I think it was Fajardo, the goal scorer for the second one, gets nutmegged. CCV appears to win the ball, but looking back at it on a little bit of replays, some slow-mo, he kind of gets Fajardo's foot before the ball. If the ref had called a penalty there, I would have understood it. And the penalty that they did call that was eventually overturned by VAR, I do think it was a bit of a dive. You can tell. I think it might have actually been Fajardo again. I might be wrong for either of these, but whoever it was, you can tell he starts to dive before the contact, but it's a reckless challenge. He shows no intention of getting the ball. I can completely understand. I think it ultimately was the right call to have no penalty, but I wouldn't be mad about it if it was a penalty. So between those two chances, I think it would have been completely fair for CCV to have given away a penalty, and then the goal. You can't be a step behind, especially when you have 5 defenders. The one that you bring on with the fresh legs cannot be a step behind Fajardo, who is just gifted an opportunity in the 6-yard box from point blank range. And maybe Horvath could do better, but it's at lightning pace. It goes through his hands. His hands are there. There's nothing really I think he can do about it from that situation. You can't be letting him get the ball. CCV, I don't understand why he keeps getting opportunities. I feel like I say it every single video, whether it's related to him or not. He's not a good defender. He plays in a bad league, and people just take his good performances there as an opportunity to put him in the team. He shouldn't be with the national team anymore. Trusty's so much better than him. There's probably other players as well, but I'm done with CCV for now. I don't want to see him for a very, very long time until he can prove that he can play at somewhat of a decent level. And then from then on, it's kind of just desperation, but they still had 75% possession, so we weren't even getting opportunities. I will say props to McKennie. That one run that he had and created the one clear-cut chance for Pepe, which, again, Pepe has missed so many chances. And now looking back at it, the fact that goal difference could end up making a huge difference if we do somehow beat Uruguay. And Panama's probably going to run up the score against Bolivia as much as they can. So the fact that Pepe missed those many chances in the first game could prove, again, to cost us a spot in the knockout rounds. And this game in particular as well. If he could just get us 1 point, salvage a horrible performance, we're still in with a good chance. But you can't miss from point blank range. And the fact that Pulisic is there too. You don't even need to shoot. Just nod it back to Pulisic. He has no one marking him. He's going to finish from that range. But like I said, props to McKennie. I didn't know he had that kind of pace in him to get around the defender. Good ball in. We bring in Sargent for some desperation time. Get a decent chance off a set piece. Again, the set pieces have been looking a lot better, so props to the new coach for that. But Richards, it's just a mistimed header. It goes up instead of trying to knot it down, which he should have done. And ultimately, we capitulate, lose 2-1. A lot of thoughts there come out, but what do you think, Yuri?
Yeah, just walking back on that, I think that the chance that Pepe had was actually before they scored. So that would have I believe it was before they scored when McKennie crosses it, because I remember at the time going ballistic that we didn't capitalize on that. And I will say, him looking at Pulisic, I don't expect him to have that skill. However, him at least timing the ball correctly, he has plenty of time. He overruns it while the cross is not perfect on his head, but it's a great cross. It's as good as you're going to get with McKennie sprinting from the back, hit the target well. Come on, you're a striker. You're supposed to hit that, chest it down, do whatever, but make sure you score that. It's unbelievable. Criminal miss by Pepe. And I will say with the subs again, if the roles were reversed, I saw some people calling for a penalty on Pulisic at the end of the first half, where it's just a regular shove inside the box. Imagine how crazy we would be going for not getting that penalty that Carter Vickers gets nutmegged, destroyed. I mean, he made that guy's highlight video for life. And we would be going crazy because I think if the ref gives that as a pen, I have no wishes. If the one that they called it back, I was surprised it got called back. I can see an argument for why it wasn't, but so reckless, insane. You would think that he's on the halfway line to try to commit to a challenge like that. It's crazy. And then I also want to highlight, I've been very critical of him. I know some people won't say, although it's the first time I see some people being more vocal about it, but Johnny Cardozo, you're there to protect the back four. There's one play before they scored the second goal where he gets nutmegged and just looks back, doesn't even track back. It's McKennie making the work and trying to block the shot. On the goal as well, Johnny is just standing there. So many chances where you're supposed to protect the back four and you don't do that. I don't like when there isn't a resilience to put effort in for the team. I know that he probably doesn't mean it, but it's crazy. We need to have a reality check on some of these players. But yeah, this second half I just feel so gutted for Pulisic, Balogun. Those guys put everything on the line. And the chance that Balogun almost curls it in, that really should have gone on because Pulisic created that out of nowhere. Great run that Ballo reads, cuts it in. But it was unfortunate and we ended up losing. So now, after that, we need to analyze the standouts, if there are any. I think we already mentioned Balogun and Pulisic. Everybody knows. But on the players that we can highlight on a negative note, Braden, or if you want to give more props to anyone positively, what is your take?
Yeah, just a couple of things, like you said. I mean, we both mentioned it. Balogun, well-deserved man of the match. It's so unfortunate for him as well because you never want to be given man of the match after you lose. I mean, we've seen so many memes about players it happening to them in the World Cup, in the Euros even, that's going on this summer as well, and now with Balogun, but it was deserved. Although I will say, I think it would have been Coco Carrasquilla if he didn't get that stupid red card at the end of the game. He was excellent for Panama, as always. I mean, we highlight him every time. And then Jedi as well. I'll give him a shout out. I think there were a couple moments defensively that he was a little unconvincing, but also just a little bit of bad bounces. And going forward as well, I mean, he wins the ball back for Balogun's goal so superbly. And I feel like I've seen him do the exact same thing so many times in this game and recently in other games as well. He anticipates it so well. And the pace that he has, the athleticism is so helpful because he just steps in, wins the ball, and then we're gone the other way. And that's exactly what happened at the end of the game too. And I have to give props to the Panama player, Edgardo Farinha. Such an excellent tackle. Excellent tackle. Because if he doesn't make that challenge, get that tactical foul, the yellow card, Jedi is gone. You can tell it. The pace, the touch that he took, he's so gone. Pulisic's wide open to the left-hand side. I think it's very realistic to say that without that challenge, it could have been 2-2. I think we would have at least had a very good chance, and maybe we would have been flaming another player for missing it, or maybe we would have been celebrating a point. But either way, an excellent challenge. I will just say maybe Jedi should have played the ball a little sooner because I think everybody knew that challenge was coming. It was inevitable, perfect tactical foul. But I think overall Jedi had a pretty solid game, winning the ball back, trying to create opportunities going forward. For the negatives, there's so many. I mean, you could point out every single player on the team besides maybe Balogun and point out moments that they could have done better. Way is the obvious one, but we already talked about him. Adams, we already said he just didn't do his job in the 45 minutes that he had. Johnny was the same way. Whoever we had at the six, I mean, we might as well have just played Musa because then at least we would have had a little bit of something going forward. We know we've seen Musa make a lot of mistakes recently, but Adams and Johnny weren't doing any better today. McKennie, I think he was okay. I think he had a couple of chances, but like you said, on the first goal, he was caught lacking, giving way too much time to Carrasquilla. Reina was invisible for the first half, which is very uncharacteristic of him, especially playing in the midfield spot. He's at least usually doing some nice defensive plays, creating a couple of chances. We've seen him be a little bit invisible on the wings sometimes, but to see that from him in the midfield, it's a little uncharacteristic and maybe a little bit concerning, although he should have definitely had some chances to prove himself in the second half. That sub, just unbelievable. And speaking of the sub, I think the last disappointment. I already ranted about him, so I won't can say too much. But CCV, I'll reiterate it again. I never want to see this guy getting national team minutes again. It's simple as that. He just makes up a mistake every single time he's challenged, and it's not just this game too. He looked so bad in the friendlies as well when he came on. Had to force Richards out of position, which is just something we can't be doing for our best center back. It's just inexplicable, really, especially when you're leaving someone like Austin Trusty at home who can actually step in as a left center back. He's a left-footed player. McKenzie is both-footed. He plays left center back for club. He's a perfect option there. Even Miles Robinson, we've seen him slot in there and do a better job. Any of these players, and there's probably another 5 that were left at home as well, that could have done a better job. I don't even know if Aaron Long would have been this bad. That might be a little bit of an overreaction. But CCV, horrible player. Don't want to see him for a very long time.
I mean, this is what the USMNT does to us, even mentioning Long here. But honestly, I understand it because, and we never want to be right when we criticize a player. It's not as if we have an agenda, but I have to give it to you. You've been very vocal about CCV, and a lot of people, even in the comments, seem to be argumentative. And I feel like we always overprotect our players. The fan base always overprotects the players, but CCV is one that if we dive in and look at objectively the performances that matter in the big games, how does he do? It's crazy. Hopefully it's a retirement party, a layover party for him at the moment, where he doesn't come in until he proves himself. He has to prove himself. I mean, he's comfortable at Celtic. That tells you what you need to know. For my standouts on the negative side, I pretty much agree with you. I think the main one is Weah. Don't want to keep on knocking and kicking the guy while he's down. He knows what he did. Everybody knows. I think that one goes without saying. I'm just going to say, Johnny, I'm so disappointed that a guy that grew up in the Brazilian soccer culture, Southern Brazil, play like you're playing a Grenal. He played for Internacional. He played in a few Grenals here and there. I got criticized in a few, actually. But play it with the intensity that you would play in a Grenal, because I don't think he has the perplexion of how much it matters to play for the USMNT. Just the way the urgency to cover space is not there, and I'm so disappointed as a fellow Brazilian American to see someone that grew up in that school of soccer to play the way he's doing as a CDM. It's unforgivable in my opinion for the expectations that I had for him. But now, after all of this, looking at the group, and I'm just going to highlight one thing on the negative. Coco Carrasquilla, even though he was amazing for Panama, can you guys imagine a scenario where he doesn't get that stupid red? And Panama stuffs Bolivia 4-0, 5-0. Bolivia is playing for pride. What pride do they have, really? Realistically, Panama with a real chance of going through. If Panama with Coco Carrasquilla beat Bolivia 4-5-0, which I think is possible, it doesn't even matter if we beat Uruguay, and we would still be staying home or going home. So that's a negative, I think, for the Panama side. Maybe a silver lining. Who knows? But now the big question is, do you think we can go through, Braden? We're both gonna be there at the stadium. Maybe we'll bring a vlog, and I think I was anticipating a chill game where maybe, well, it's just a game of friends, but everything is left to play, life on the line, really. Do you think we're gonna do it?
Yeah, I think it is an underrated aspect that I didn't even think about. But so props to you for noticing that. Without their best player, their only playmaker, really, Coco Carrasquilla, Panama will still beat Bolivia. Their lives are on the line, but it might only be by 1 goal, 2 goals, whereas with him, it would have been by a lot more. So if it does go down to goal difference, that could be a crucial factor. And speaking of goal difference, I was watching the Uruguay versus Bolivia game, praying for a demolition, and thankfully it happens. 5-0 to Uruguay, which is huge because it was 2-0 at halftime. If it had stayed 2-0, like we did against Bolivia, go up 2-0 at halftime, waste our chances in the second half, and take our foot off the gas a little bit. If Uruguay had done that, they would have had to come into this game needing a result, because topping the group is so important. I mean, we'll see tomorrow what happens in Group D, but after Brazil's first game, there's a real chance they don't get out of the group, which means topping the group for Group C is so important to potentially play against Costa Rica. It's night and day between playing them and playing Colombia, as we saw in the friendlies before the camp as well. So it's a huge incentive. And now Uruguay having a 6+ goal difference on us is huge, because they now no longer need to win. They just need to avoid losing by 3 or more. So even if they go out there, they can rest their team. I'm not saying they will do it. I still think they're probably going to play most of the starters, but they won't have the same intensity level that they would have if they needed a result. They can go out there, lose to us 2-1, 1-0, anything like that, even 2-0. We could do a 2-0 and still finish second in the group. So I think that's absolutely huge. I'm not saying Uruguay is going to take it easy on us, but I'm saying we would have been screwed. If they had needed a result, it would have been over for us, especially after the last performances that we've seen from the team. So I think that's a huge aspect. Do I think we'll go through? No, I have no confidence in this team anymore. I had confidence going into the Colombia game, and I got burned for it. And then I had no confidence. We got the Brazil result. I got a little bit back. I'm not making the same mistake again. I promise. This is the last time I have hope in this team until we can prove something. And that something is going to have to happen without Greg Berhalter at the helm.
Absolutely. And we haven't talked about Greg too much, but I think we've touched on that key. It's the most repetitive tone ever, because it is the obvious. Greg is nowhere near the level that he needs to be, nowhere near the level of manager that this crop of players deserves to go through. So that's why maybe we haven't really touched on him, guys, because quite frankly, the guy is a bozo. Yeah, he shouldn't be there. But I'm so happy that Uruguay destroyed Bolivia, because as you said, I don't think it's in their DNA. And I saw Bielsa even before the tournament saying that if the guys play the entire season, they're going to play for their country. They need to be ready to play every single game. I don't think it's in their DNA to be okay with losing with him at the helm, but it definitely helps us. I think that there's a real scenario where they'll rest a few players here and there. They don't have the largest depth, so maybe some key players get rested here and there. We'll have everything to play for. And today was a capitulation, but we had two crazy events that are out of the ordinary. A stupid red at the beginning, and a concussion to the goalkeeper. That changes the team. That changes the confidence. So maybe I'm being deluded, but I'm going to say that we make it through in second place, obviously. I mean, there's no way we get first now, but I'm saying we make it through somehow. And I'm actually going to think that we're going to play Paraguay in the next round. I think that there's a real scenario where Brazil capitulate, and I think that Paraguay can beat Costa Rica. So hopefully we just somehow make it through. Even if we play Brazil, just want us to go through. And I think that there is a chance there. I'm going to keep my hopes up. Just trying to find a silver lining. Very diluted one, by the way. If I go with my head, obviously I will say that we'll lose that game. There's no way I can imagine us beating Uruguay, but hopefully. But the big question as well that we need to ask is, well, I was going to ask is Greg getting fired if we get grouped? But I'm also going to implement another one right here. Would you rather us get grouped if it is a for sure thing that Greg gets fired, Braden? Do you think that it's worth it to take this type of hit, or ultimately you want to see us go through and maybe have a run? And do you think it would happen? Would he get fired with the amount of pressure that maybe he gets from the outside media?
It really sucks that we're talking about this because it's such a negative way to end the video, but it's so fitting based on the results. And the reality is, and it's such a bad thing to say, but I would rather us get grouped and see Greg get fired than see us somehow advance, get a signature win, maybe, if you want to call it that, against Uruguay, and then get pumped by Colombia in the quarterfinals. We know what's going to happen if we go up against Colombia. We saw a preview of it in the friendly. Obviously, it would be a little bit closer of a game because it's a knockout stage game, higher stakes, but we would lose very handily. It wouldn't even be close. We'd get run off the pitch again, kind of like we did today even. So I don't see the point in that. I really don't. I don't. There's no progress, and at least if we get Greg out, we know what we're gonna do with Greg. There's a clear ceiling, and it's at the absolute bare minimum. We see people in the comments as well saying it, bare minimum Greg. I think it was Pete from 11 Yanks that came up with the nickname, so credit to him. We know what we're gonna get with Greg. It's the absolute bare minimum, and in this tournament, it's gonna be even less than that. Not getting out of the group, I would rather see him get fired. Will he get fired? Again, I still don't know. I really don't, because the two horrible losses that he has now had, and we'll discount Colombia because it was a friendly and because they're a much better team, but the loss against Trinidad and Tobago that I mentioned earlier on in the video, and this loss today against Panama, it was the same storyline. We get a stupid red card, and it has to be said, I mean, Greg's a horrible manager. We all know this, but it's not on him. Those red cards aren't on him. Stupid decisions from Serginho Dest and Tim Weah. You can't blame Greg for that, especially when it's like the first time that we've ever seen behavior like that from the player. It makes no sense. It's uncharacteristic. It's not something you can blame the manager for, and the reality is it does completely change the game. Now, did Greg make a lot of mistakes with the substitutions and the tactics? Of course he did. I mean, he does this every game. We know this. But I think it gives reasoning for some people, and I know the media have been getting more on Berhalter now, but I was watching the post-game. Alexi Lawless still said that Greg's such a good manager. I get this guy out of a job, man. I think we've all lost patience with Lawless as well as Berhalter, but it just gives the federation an excuse. because you can blame the players for the red cards, and rightly so, really. I mean, they deserve a full blame for that. And it takes away from the fact that Greg completely mismanaged this game. He mismanages every game that he goes into, except for against Mexico. I think, I don't know, for some reason against Mexico, he turns into a good manager. But outside of that, he doesn't know how to command a game in any way. And the one thing that we have been slightly promising for Greg in the past with his substitution choices, he completely got it wrong today. And that's the first time I've seen him get subs that badly wrong. There's no future with Berhalter. There's no promising future with Berhalter, but I still think the Federation will somehow find an excuse, use the red cards maybe, and not fire him.
Yeah, what I think is just on the substitutions in the past, I think you would get them right because the starting lineup would be so off that the course fixes it itself. The squad would fix in itself because then he puts the obvious choice that should have started in the beginning. When he has a good and acceptable starting 11, and it comes down to his skill to manage a game, it's obviously so subpar. I mean, it's ridiculous, really. I think we have one of the worst managers out of the, if you want to take the FIFA rankings, out of the top 30 there. Arguably the worst one. I think it's fair to say that. But I'm going to have to hold out on some hope right here. I have to somewhere find in myself that he will get fired if he gets grouped. And if that's the case, it's a huge, huge hit to take because I don't want us to get grouped. So, and I don't know how I said Paraguay at the beginning. I was just confusing. I mean, this game got me destroyed mentally. So, obviously, we would play Colombia and very likely lose. So, if that's the scenario, really, of holding on a prayer to make out of the group to try to not get destroyed by Colombia, he has to get fired. I have to take that option. But let us know in the comments below, guys. Would you prefer that? And it's a very negative note, but I think it's a very reasonable and feasible option that we may find ourselves in. There's a real scenario where we don't make it through. It's not even that crazy to think of. Some people may already be caught onto the reality check and then say we're already out. But let us know in the comments below. Do you think we'll make it through? Do you think there's a chance for us to make it through? And if we do, would you rather just get grouped instead of making it through? Let us know your thoughts on the performance as well. Crazy, disaster class, very atypical game. Maybe the most CONCACAF game in a CONMEBOL competition that we'll ever see. This was insane. Absolutely pandemonium. Crazy to see the scenes that we saw. But let us know in the comments below what you thought of the video. It's a little bit more extensive, but with a game like this, we have to talk about it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and pray for Greg to get sacked somehow, even if we make it through. Wouldn't that be awesome if he gets fired, even if we do make it to the quarters? But it's not going to happen. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.